National Education Association of Disabled Students NEADS would like to begin this event by acknowledging the land that which we gather is the traditional, unceded, and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here and thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We are grateful to have this opportunity to be present in this territory. We commit to continue and to explore and make meaningful contributions to the calls of action that result from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada.
Great, thank you so much, Aaliyah. That was fantastic. Really important to reflect on the land that we're living and working and playing. My name is Elizabeth Mohler. I'm a doctoral candidate at Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. My home is here in Toronto, and I am a researcher for NEADS and have been with the organization for about 10 years now. I'm really happy today to be in conversation with Kimberley Chiasson about a very important issue, and that is attendant care services on post-secondary campuses. We've seen through the COVID-19 pandemic how our community has been treated, and by our community, I mean the disability community, in terms of being left behind, not considered, being erased from conversations. And certainly when it comes to care, we've seen how an ethic of care has not been applied during COVID for those who need it. So we thought this was a very timely topic. So Kimberley, I'd love for you just to tell our group today a little bit about yourself, your background, who you are. Let us get to know you a bit.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Kimberley Chiasson. I'm a fourth-year journalism student at Carleton, and I'm a full-time wheelchair user as cerebral palsy. So I rely on the Attendant Services program here at Carleton, and it's unique in itself in the way that it's the only university in Canada, I believe, that offers a fully functioning attendant program that allows students to have caregiving while on campus and give sort of that authentic post-secondary experience. But while I've been part of the program, I've noticed that my situation is pretty unique, and that there are a lot of areas within disability and post-secondary that do need improvements. So that kind of got me motivated to dig a little deeper, and especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, Carleton clients experienced some closures surrounding the attendant services program. So we took it upon ourselves to raise awareness into that issue and look into how this can be dealt with in the future, which led me to a lot of personal activism on campus and off campus.
Thank you so much. There's a lot to unpack and really dismantle there, but I want to take a step back because you mentioned a few moments ago that Carleton, to your knowledge, is one of the only, or maybe the only post-secondary institution in Canada that provides attendant care services. So why did you decide to go to Carleton? Like, was that sort of the impetus that led you to decide to go to Carleton because of the attendant care services program?
Yes, so Carleton very quickly became my only option for post-secondary just because of the nature of my disability and the amount of care I require. It made the most sense for me to be in an environment where that care was readily available. And although I had thought of pursuing other options at my local university at Laurentian, the architecture of the university didn't really make sense for me, and I didn't even get to formally apply to the university. They had noticed my mobility aids and noticed the equipment that I use, and just kindly asked me to forego my application to the school. And I know a lot of folks were in my position as well. A lot of young people are just kind of expected to avoid university settings or post-secondary education in general, just because it's considered too difficult or too overwhelming for their families or individuals themselves to process. So Carleton was basically the only choice for me at that point.
Yeah, so many things there that resonated. You know, this idea that you were actually asked to not apply really hit home for me, and it's put up my spidey senses for sure. And I think that, you know, in what you're saying, it sounds to me like there's a lot of people who probably get discouraged and don't apply because they know they're going to need care on campus. But, we might have got a bit ahead of ourselves. If we back up, can you just let us know what are attendant care services? Like, how do they work? Are there different kinds? Is there a specific kind that you yourself use?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. So at Carleton, our model is a little bit more unconventional than most, I would assume. We have a combination of PSWs and students who are trained to do PSW-like tasks, and they are on call on campus, supposedly 24 hours a day. So if I needed anything, I would call a main phone and get distributed a caregiver that way. And they're all very familiar with what I need and how to navigate campus with me. So for somebody like myself, I require care at most stages of my day. So that's getting into the bed, getting dressed, getting ready for classes, things like that. So very basic tasks that would become a little bit otherwise overwhelming if I didn't have those services on call, especially when it comes to like completing university-oriented tasks. If I had to schedule each aspect of my day, like so many often do, it can become a little bit too cluttered. So the Carleton Attendant Services model aims to kind of take that element away and ensure that it can remain unscheduled.
So it sounds like, some key things there are flexibility and really, autonomy over when, the how, the who. And is that, in your experience, Kimberley, is that typically what attendant care services are, or is it more structured and, people will, use an agency and get who they get, or are there models where people sort of direct their own care? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. And Laura, I do see you've raised your hand. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, so not to worry if we don't call on you right away. We're not ignoring you.
Yeah, so as a lot of you probably are familiar, the standard for attendant care and caregiving in general is usually through agency. It's a little bit more medicalized than usual, which means that each part of your day is usually structured and revolves around kind of the direction of your agency. I had to hire my own PSW care throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and that very quickly became more complicated than my experiences here at Carleton. So the attendant element just kind of gives more room for spontaneity and flexibility within your day, but also is a more holistic and untraditional approach to attendant care and caregiving in general. So it's a little bit more unconventional than what we're used to.
Absolutely. So, it sounds like, just to recap, we have sort of the agency-based model where you might get, a couple of hours in the morning or at night, and then, more of a self-directed or self-managed model where folks can hire, train, and onboard their own attendants and have that bit of flexibility. And it sounds like that's something that you did a little bit during the COVID-19 pandemic out of necessity.
Right.
But what stigma do you think exists, or maybe you've even experienced, for people with disabilities who require attendant care services on campuses? So not necessarily just Carleton, but like in general, what stigmas do you think might exist?
Yeah, I definitely think there are a lot of underlying stigmas, and I think the number one proof of that is the lack of attendant care and the lack of that conversation within post-secondary settings. I think a lot of people forget the fact that we're all very interdependent by nature. Like humans themselves depend on other humans to get the most basic of tasks done, whether it be buying groceries, that food comes from somewhere, or going to the dentist. You still need people around you to upkeep different parts of your life. And I think a lot of that for disabled individuals is just overlooked and seen as an extra step. But really, caregiving and like maintaining my life as a disabled person is not very different than anything else anyone has to endure. It just means a few extra steps. And I think if we took that stigma away from um, that model in general, there would be a lot more just views of necessity for attendant care in education, and it would make the educational pathways of a lot of disabled people a lot smoother.
I wonder too, do you think that there's stigma from faculty, from administrators around whether a person with a disability who requires some supports around attendant care services is going to be able to, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes, manage in post-secondary or handle post-secondary? Have you experienced that or heard of anybody who has?
Right, yeah. So I have experienced that, and I know the majority of other clients unfortunately have. I think because we're kind of at this turning point generationally where disabled people are being put out into public more and more visible, um, we are kind of at a turning point where care still needs to be normalized, and the things that we need still need to be integrated into um, what we consider daily life, right? So I definitely think that there needs to be an understanding of the fact that even though we do require quote unquote extra needs or more strenuous accommodations sometimes, those accommodations are only there so that we can experience equity in comparison to other students. Especially since I'm in the journalism program, there's a lot of stigma around whether or not I could keep up to the other students in my department, just because that is a competitive program by nature. And a lot of my professors didn't really know exactly what the attendant services program was. It's kind of been working behind the curtain for the past few decades or so. So I think there just needs to be an acceptance and an understanding that, attendant care does happen. It is normal. It is there as a tool, and it is necessary.
Yeah, there's again so much to unveil there. I think your comments on care are very timely. We've seen, I don't want to bring everything back to COVID, but we have seen how important care is, and not just in the sense of ADLs, but caring for one another, caring for communities, collectives of care. And I think sometimes when I think about stigma myself, I think it comes from fear. People are afraid of disability. They're afraid of dependency, and like you've beautifully said, we're all interdependent, and that's a thing that I think people don't think about. I think there's a lot of discourse around independence, especially in a post-secondary setting in a competitive program, and we don't think enough about interdependence. And so, how have you sort of managed this stigma? Have you found that in your time you've been able to sort of navigate the stigma and sort of manage some of the negative expectations or negative stigmas that people have had towards folks with disabilities?
Well, I think one of the primary things for me, and what you'll hear from a lot of other disabled students, of course, is finding your community and finding people who can relate in those experiences. But what's helped me the most, even though it has taken a little bit more labor on my part, is just being very willing to advocate and educate for myself, specifically because I know that if I were to just have those casual conversations with my professors and faculty, it might make it easier for the next cohort of undergrads that are in my shoes. So I do think that we are at a step now where, because attendant care isn't as common, neither is the open dialogue around what disability looks like for young people specifically. So those two things kind of go hand in hand. And I think the more we encourage one, the other will come out of the groundwork as well.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And it's something that you kind of touched on, and I wonder what are your thoughts around this? Why do you think care, in its broadest sense, is not a part of the university structure? Like when we think about care, caring for one another, caring for ourselves, caring for our wider communities, but then also just talking about care, why do you think it's not such a big part of the university structure?
Well, I think it's the wider expectation of what a university student looks like. We're just starting to come into a time where university education is more accessible to a variety of people, but it's still, as everyone I think is aware, um, holding a lot of barriers for a variety of backgrounds. And historically, disabled people have been hidden away from public spaces and especially education for most of our history now. So again, we're just at a little bit of a turning point where people need to get used to seeing us in those settings and getting used to valuing disabled people in uh, educational settings and realizing the knowledge and the kind of unique perspectives that we do hold.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been thinking about this a lot myself. I'm writing a book chapter on the downloading of responsibility that students with disabilities are expected to take on or to manage in order to have accommodations and supports on campus. So this idea of like responsibilization. So, you talked about sort of the ideal university student and who that is. It's someone who's independent or somebody who's self-sufficient and all those sort of very, not to use an academic term, but neoliberal terms. And then we think about, how much extra work and how much responsibility in addition to courses are students who need extra supports taking on. And what does that look like for those students in terms of finding space and finding community to share these experiences?
Yeah, university is difficult for anyone. The majority of students that transition from high school do have a difficult time at some point within their degree, and that's the expectation almost. So to put that kind of onus and responsibility onto disabled students to do all of this heavy lifting and all of these extra checklists just to make sure that they can have very basic needs fulfilled, it puts a lot of pressure. And I, now that I've been in my position and I'm nearing close to the end of my degree, I understand why post-secondary institutions can seem so much more intimidating for especially disabled students than it needs to be. And it kind of creates this vicious cycle of, well, if you can't upkeep productivity in a way that looks like X, Y, and Z, maybe you're not the right fit and maybe you should just, settle for a different kind of pathway.
Yeah, so notions of productivity for sure, and like what does it mean to be productive, and all of the invisible work, and that's not my term, that's somebody else's term, that needs to be done for us even to show up for sure. And I think that's one of the things that again, just being in a very I guess society where work is valued, that productivity piece is very important. And Anne, I saw you put a note in the chat, and we'll definitely grab that at the question period. But do you think that there are students with disabilities aren't attending post-secondary because of the fact they either don't know that Carleton has an attendant care program, or they can't find one closer to home, or they're just not sure that they can manage? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think there's a combination of factors there. I know when I was in high school, we weren't really given a lot of resources as to what my post-secondary career would look like. I was an honor student. I was obsessed with school, a big nerd, but I didn't really know what that meant for me afterwards. And it was kind of just an ongoing question mark. My treatment center in particular didn't really give a lot of transitional resources to me or my parents, and I just kind of came across Carleton by a fluke because I connected with other disabled youth at a summer camp. And then I found out that the majority of the staff that were working there as disabled people were also at some point at Carleton. So I just didn't have those tool sets in front of me at all. And I think that because we're already navigating such a narrow playing field, when you put more communication gaps in, it's kind of a recipe for disaster in terms of getting what you need and making a proper plan for yourself.
Yeah, and I want to just sort of pedal backwards a bit, if I might, around you weren't given the resources around post-secondary, and I hear that a lot, and I certainly know that peers and colleagues of mine have experienced that. Why do you think that is, that people aren't being given those resources? Because I think they're out there, but I wonder why they're not reaching the people they need to reach.
Yeah, they're definitely out there. I think they're just kind of shadowed. Again, no matter how fantastic the resources are, I think there's just a general understanding and background effect of maybe like not as much awareness, because we also have this background understanding that disabled people aren't quite taking up space in education as much yet. And these institutions are built so much against us that to have extra information that's publicly available and everywhere is just another kind of roadblock in the way of getting us to that transitional period as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, transitions are so important, and we all experience them. I've heard, and we chatted about this in sort of our pre-chat, that during COVID, Carleton unfortunately postponed or put on hiatus their attendant care services program. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and how that impacted you specifically, and how you navigated those challenges?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Carleton's attendant services program closed its doors in March 2020, along with the rest of the university, and we all transitioned online into Zoom. Became very familiar with that, but Carleton stopped kind of relying on the hybrid model as much within September, and we have been transitioning to in-person classes. I was under the assumption that as long as my classes would be in person, the attendant care would resume, and I would be able to make the decision to return to campus, but unfortunately I wasn't so lucky. Attendant services chose to remain closed for the fall semester, which meant that even if you had required courses that were in person or any sort of other obligations, you could not live on campus. It was understood that having a PSW presence or any sort of attendant care would run too much of a health risk with the COVID-19 protocols. And there really was not a lot of discussion around the presence of the attendant care program during this, to my knowledge. It was kind of just an afterthought by the university, and that left a lot of students very unsure as to what the rest of their degrees would look like. I know a number of the clients from prior to COVID have had to kind of rearrange some credits and change their pathway to graduation. So again, this was just another example of how higher education overlooked disabled students in a big way, right? Because it changed not only your educational prospects, but just in terms of safety and security, a lot of students were not getting what they would have been getting if they were on campus and secure in residence rooms.
So so you've talked a lot about the program shutting down and impacting students. So how did you sort of navigate that? Like you mentioned earlier that you hired your own attendants. Is that something that you had to apply for funding for or budget for?
Yeah, so that was something that I had to apply for funding for, and it wasn't really something that we were prepared to do. My family, after the initial spur of lockdowns, had to return back to work, and we were never under the
Right.
assumption that I would require attendant care at my home,
Right.
just because I had never needed it in that sense before. So
Right.
unfortunately, it was pretty difficult to get PSWs to my area. I live in a rural area of Sudbury when I
Hmm.
was on campus, and that only allotted me about 2 hours a week, um, which I don't know,
Wow. 2 hours
uh,
a week? Did I just want to make sure I heard that right?
2 hours a week.
Okay. Wow.
I would divide that up as much as I could and spread it out, but it obviously didn't supplement and cover a lot of what I do need since I am considered somebody that needs full care. So for my family, that meant that my mom needed to reduce her hours at work and kind of juggle things like that. And I was in a more privileged position than a lot of the other attendant services clients and a lot of the other folks that I know. So it just shows, again, a lot of the extra strain that disabled students had to go through because in the meantime, I was taking courses in my little office room and trying to pretend that everything was okay and that I was just a normal student. But
Yeah. Yeah. So really, dealing with almost a second job on top of going to school because you're self-managing. So you're dealing with almost a second job, it sounds like.
it felt like it, yeah.
Yeah. But have you done or maybe you are doing any advocacy work to address this issue where attendant care services weren't provided and maybe are coming back, but they're not up to full speed yet? Are you doing any advocacy work around that? And could you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, so I was one of the students who spearheaded what we called the CU Care Act, and that was to raise awareness around the closure of the attendant services program in September. So we wanted to let other students know and let other schools know that not only was attendant services closed, but that we wanted to see more of a presence of attendant services. And we wanted to show how this was affecting um, us specifically during COVID. So a few of the students and I decided to host a walkout on campus in September, and I was one of the people in attendance. I drove up to Ottawa and we had just stood up and kind of made some speeches and talked about how this was impacting the rest of kind of the student morale. So we eventually worked to reopen the program for January. So I did my winter semester here on campus. And now we are working towards kind of improving the conversation around the necessity of attendant care and also restructuring attendant services a little bit more, trying to ensure that a closure doesn't happen again and keeping longevity in terms of the quality of care as well.
And, in terms of restructuring and quality of care, can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so because this is such a new structure for a university to take on, of course, attendance services is not perfect. I am very grateful that we do have it and that it has given me these opportunities. But again, this is something the university that is taking on that is kind of entering uncharted territories. So we do just want to ensure that closures and unnecessary strain that we experienced during COVID does not happen again. And we want to make sure that our university and other universities do see how important it is to prioritize the conversation of care for disabled students, just because we kind of felt like our concerns and our struggles were kind of being overlooked by the greater institution. So we just hope to kind of keep that dialogue going and make sure that other students are aware as well.
Yeah. And, it sounds like what you're really pushing for is good care and consistent care.
Mhm.
And if we were to dream, like blue sky thinking, what would really good care on campus look like? And I don't necessarily just here mean attendant care services, but I mean care for all students. What do you think that might look like?
I think the number one concern that I would have would just be autonomy. You want to have as much control over your day as.
Oh, I think you cut out, Kimberly.
Yeah, Elizabeth, she's frozen.
Okay, we'll just give her a minute.
Did you want to start taking some questions maybe that you could address?
Oh,
perhaps
okay, sure.
Was not available right away.
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely do that. So maybe we can sort of pause that and we'll hear what Kim has to say about what good care could look like for all students on campus when they join us again in a moment or two. But I wonder if we might want to entertain some questions while we're waiting for Kim.
I had my hand up before, but this
Sure.
it's Laura from Winnipeg, U of W. It may have been answered because I was on hold with my doctor and I had to take the call. So Kimberly may have answered it already while I missed the piece.
That's okay.
I was just wondering, I think I missed the piece of the descriptor of what types of services the attendant care position was serving. So I know she said, they would help her navigate campus. They were, on call. Just if Elizabeth, if you remember some of the
Sure, yeah, for sure.
details
So
of-
yeah, so
thank
she
you.
talked about on Carleton specifically, they would help with activities of daily living. So getting up, getting dressed, eating, navigating campus. We also touched on different types of attendant care services. So in that question, I was asking what are the different types. So really briefly, Kimberly touched on agency supports where somebody from an agency, maybe it'll be March of Dimes or Neil Squire, or here in Toronto, we have the local health integration network, the LINS, will come out and provide care to people that need it. And that's from an agency, so you don't necessarily get a say on who, and there's generally a cap on hours. And then we also very briefly touched on self-managed care, which is where you as the consumer are given funding, and then you find, hire, train, and onboard your own attendants, and you train them. So I hope that answered your question. And I do see that Kim is back with us. So maybe I'll just say, Kim, can you hear us? Okay, doesn't look like yet. So that was what the different types of care that we talked about. And I see, Chrissy, you have your hand up as well. So feel free to jump in.
Yeah, hi, nice to meet you. And I see some familiar faces from when I used to be at Carleton. So my name is Chrissy Kelly. I'm an associate professor at the University of Manitoba, and I research self-managed care across Canada. So one thing I'm interested in is sort of nuts and bolts about this program. I'm not sure if you or perhaps someone else who's in the room might have the details. I'm thinking particularly whether the Carleton program is registered as a home care agency, like just in terms of how it operates. And secondly, if it gets funding from the Ministry of Health. And the reason I'm asking this is just to kind of understand how it works in terms of bringing it forward for policy recommendations. Those very practical questions are what comes up from universities and health systems.
Frank, maybe I'll turn that over to you. Or, oh, Kim? Do you want to try to speak again, Kim, to answer Chrissy's question? Perfect.
I think I'm back now.
You are back. Yes, go ahead.
Construction. Yeah, so I think Frank can also add on to this, but the Attendant Services program is funded by the Ministry of Health, and is also given a little bit of a grant internship because of its government status, but it's not really affiliated specifically with a home care agency or a model. It's just overseen and funded by the ministry itself.
Just one more thing on that, because the Center for Independent Living in Winnipeg, the ILRC, they've actually become a home care agency, even though that's kind of a scary word sometimes, but they became an agency and they're doing very independent type home care, independent living home care in a very cool way, but they just chose to kind of get that accreditation or demarcation so that they can carry on in the sector. So that's what I mean, not that whether it works as an agency, but whether it is considered an agency by the health sector or not.
No, so right now I don't think it's labeled as an agency itself.
Okay.
I just want to say that I think we have somebody here from the Center for Independent Living in Toronto. I'm not trying to put the person on the spot, but I know that SILT in Toronto manages attendant services throughout the province. And of course, every province, every jurisdiction has different approaches. So I know that there are many university and college students who are attending post-secondary, particularly public post-secondary schools across the country who are receiving PSW, attendant services support, and also in some cases medical support while they attend college or university, but it's not provided as a program of the university like Carleton's is. I think there's also a program still at York University that's supported and managed by March of Dimes, if I'm not mistaken. But I'll let Kim answer that, or if there's anybody who also knows more about self-managed care and the different programs in other provinces other than Ontario, or including Ontario, that would be great too.
Yeah, so every province is a little bit different, but I do know there are multiple agencies that will supply funding to post-secondary students. It just might take a little bit more scheduling and restriction, as we had mentioned prior, but a lot of folks I know are registering with direct funding and getting their care that way. The main barrier is that some universities don't allow you to bring in care on campus or into a dorm setting, which has been one of the bigger barriers, just because it's up to the university policies itself. But anything outside of that, you should be able to access funding for going to and from classes and things like that as well.
Great. And Kimberly, I do just want to wrap up, but before we move on to the audience Q&A, we sort of circled to that while you were reconnecting. Just what you were saying about what good care looks like for all students on campus, and you started to talk about autonomy. So I just wondered if we could wrap that part up, and then we can go back to our audience Q&A. So I'd really just like blue sky thinking. What would good care look for all students with and without disabilities on campus?
Yeah, before Zoom interrupted me, I was just saying that I think the most important aspect would be not only autonomy, but just kind of a more flexible approach and one that can coexist with your academics. Because right now, I think we are looking at this in a way that kind of one cannot exist without the other. Like that was a bad metaphor, but just in terms of the way we are approaching the care, I think we are forgetting that it is a dependency on care that gets us the education itself, and without that initial system and initial structure, we can't have the education element to that experience. So I think there just needs to be more of a connection between the two that is kind of a symbiotic relationship of sorts. But what comes with that, again, is just a general understanding from the university and from the faculty that these services are existing and are non-negotiable in terms of whether or not they wish to provide them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's key. And I think, just in terms of care in a bigger sense, I think about, creating classrooms and environments that reflect care. So, having accommodation certainly there, but also having accessible and inclusive spaces, having UDL built into classes and into activities, coming from a place of trusting students, coming from a place where educators, faculty, staff understand that we're all coming to the learning space from different places. So really just, thinking about how caring for one another, in addition to sort of needing care in the more literal sense, just, a climate of caring where we care for one another, knowing that some people really benefited from online learning and some people really like being in person. So having options for different people that meet different needs. So I would add that as well. So now I want to go back to our audience, to our Q&A, and maybe Aaliyah, you can help me with some hands because I do see there's a few up.
All right, we'll start with Anne. You had a question?
Yes. Okay, good morning. Okay, my experience comes from BIU, which is here in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island. And the whole time I was there, we always had some kind of attendant services. VIU actually is on a hill. You're on a hill, similar to SFU. And there's always been, various types of attendant services. But I guess the one thing that I wanted to stress is how Elizabeth just mentioned it, but universal design is like so paramount. And when they're constructing or renovating universities, it would be really great if they would use UDL. And also the other thing that I really am in favor of, and it hurts me to hear Kimberley saying how, which I know is so true, is how students are not told about things that they can get when they go on to like university, and that if the provinces were united and there was an actual universal type of education all over Canada, we wouldn't be having this constant, one province gets this, another province gets that. Why can't we all have the same thing? I think that would alleviate a lot of the problems that students who are planning to go to university would not have to, it wouldn't have to be a problem. So that's my piece.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think for sure jurisdictions are tricky. And I think, universal design for instruction for learning is one piece, right? It's the language we use in our course outlines. It's the way that we incorporate inclusion into our classrooms. It's the way as instructors we approach learning and offer alternative people to choose different types of assignments, what works for them. Of course, within the confines of the course, people have to be able to demonstrate they know the material, but giving choice and options, being flexible. So I think it's, it's kind of beyond just UDL, it's just in your whole approach to teaching and learning. And I think also, in the wider university, just the approach to who we've traditionally welcomed and how we can sort of broaden that. So for sure.
Yeah, I spoke about, sorry, Elizabeth, I spoke about that in my book and in my thesis.
Wonderful.
Because as a person with disabilities, I mean, yes, I was given different accommodations that other students had never had, but it was sitting down and speaking with the professors and saying, look, these things have been known to be very useful for other students with disabilities. And, could I not try this, or could we not try this? And my professors were very, very open to it. Now, not everybody would get those services, but you can certainly try.
Yeah, Thank you so much, Anne. Aaliyah, who else do we have?
We have another question from, is it Cherry or Sherry?
Sherry.
Cherry, okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Sherry. I'm the accessibility manager at the University of Windsor, and we're looking at developing these opportunities for students who need attendant care by centralizing it, making it easier to access. And the way it's structured in Ontario, and Chrissy, the information is up on the history of Carleton and how they've had this program, and it looks like they have a pretty unique funding arrangement with the Ministry of Health, where if I'm reading the information correctly, it's flowing from the Ministry of Health. They've hired staff to manage the program. It looked like up to 3 people, and then they have the various people doing the work, the PSWs and the students, etc. It almost seems like a double-edged sword. So if you were to bring on an organization or you do become a healthcare organization, students who have family managed care, from the best I understand around the family managed care program, you can't use a provider who's a designated home and community care provider in Ontario. So if you brought in a home care provider, but students have opted for family managed care, then what you have provided on campus, they can't access unless they're willing to bend a little bit on that. So, I mean, we're looking at, I don't know how many people are from Ontario, so I don't want to take up all this space here. I want to share the air. But, things to think about is the family managed care, and the thinking about, the people who have portable funding. It can move it around the province. It may have like 10, 20 hours a week already designated PSW care, then that might work with a designated organization where they can just shift the funding shift the hours that were allocated. But then again, there's part of a federal grant that would apply to all of us. Like when students apply for ODSP, they can get grants and bursaries, but there's a federal piece for families or students from lower income families who can access funding that they can apply to attendant care. And then also just thinking a little bit broader about staff and faculty who may be on campus who could use it. So how do you develop something that others who are also part of the campus community, and it's just as important to have representation in the student body as it is in for the staff and faculty, that we have a diversified population on campus regardless of your position. So anyways, those are some of the hard questions and things we're trying to sort out. And I think that's part of the institutional barriers, is being able to provide this kind of support to the students. And we're trying to work through it because we realize how important this is. But, these are the challenges. Just put it out there.
Kim, do you have any comments or anything you'd like to add to what Sherry was saying?
Yeah, I completely hear you. I think you've raised a lot of good points there. And another kind of barrier that I had experienced during COVID was because of the closure, the university itself wouldn't allow us to self-hire and supplement and live in the actual architecture of the university. So I believe there are some kind of liability concerns with a lot of universities in terms of letting these services in. I know that was my experience at Laurentian. The reason why they rejected my proposed application was actually the washrooms. They wouldn't allow like any sort of transfer equipment into a physical washroom for me to be able to use any of that. So on top of the actual legislation concerns with the policy of acquiring the care itself, there's also the liability concerns and the wavering of the institution on top of that. So there's a few gears at play there, but yeah, definitely a lot to consider.
Yeah, thank you so much. Anyone else have a question or comment? Aaliyah, do we have any hands up?
No hands up and nothing in the chat.
Okay, perfect. I guess I would just throw back to you, Kim. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything I didn't touch on that you think is really important for folks to know?
I think we covered a lot of it, but just in terms of kind of what an ideal space would look like for disabled students, I think we learned a lot from the pandemic, hybrid learning became so standardized, and I hope that momentum does keep up because it allowed people that otherwise couldn't access that kind of education to have it at their bedside or in whatever space works for them. So I think that is also something to consider when it comes to the universal design and how we move forward with those restructuring for that framework.
Absolutely. And Sherry, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a question. Kimberly, I was trying to follow the timeline. So Carleton closed it down at the beginning of the pandemic, but you advocated, and it was the attendant care services started again in January of this year?
So they resumed in January 2022, and they are ongoing as of now. So we'll be back at capacity in September, but there were, I think, 8 clients that we were a part of the program this past semester as well.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Oh, we have 2 participants that have their hands up, and we do have 5 minutes left. So, Aaliyah, who have we got?
Hands up. I don't see any. Oh, we have Louise.
Hi, sorry if my volume's not the
You sound great.
greatest here.
Yep, go
Okay,
ahead.
I was just gonna mention, I also use the attendant services at Carleton University, and when I was in high school and asking the various like guidance counselors and people who could support people with disabilities about, you know, what my options for university might be, they didn't have anything to say to me. And I was told they would research and get back to me, and no one ever did, even when I followed up about options for me. So I feel like we had a lot of university fairs and things like that at our school, but no one ever spoke about anything to do with disability. So maybe if it was starting with, you know, the universities, when they pick someone to send, maybe someone who has experience with the just the resources on campus, or maybe like even sending 2 people or something like that, just so there would be someone for me to ask questions to, because I felt like I was going to all these different presentations and it didn't really matter what the people were saying, because what the main concern for me was just getting care on campus, and I would just kind of go to the best option in that regard.
Yeah. So again, it's this theme of you had to do a lot of work yourself, you know, and we've all heard that. And I think we've all felt that, where people don't know what to say, don't know how to help us, or they have the best of intentions, but the answers aren't really what we need. And so again, that extra labor falls to us. So thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm glad you found your way to Carleton, and lovely to have you here today.
It's Frank here. Frank's the national coordinator of NEADS, and I know that Aaliyah in her closing remarks will address some of the resources that we have as an organization. I think that we have a role to play in that, as the organization that represents post-secondary students and graduates with disabilities across Canada. Of course, we have these informational events that with expert speakers like Kim to address certain issues that are really important to disabled students in our community. But I should just say that we have 4 websites, including a financial aid portal, our main website, needs.ca, an employment website breaking it down. And we also have a human rights website, disabilityrightsonline.ca, and we are a member group of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities. So in terms of students with disabilities who are in high school, for example, and are considering next steps, oftentimes you're right, guidance counselors don't have that information. Maybe it's because they're not aware of our organization or government websites, or where to find information on their university or college websites. We have a number of searchable features on our website, for example, for all of the accessibility services offices across Canada, with contact information and links to those the websites, the URLs of those service center websites, We have Career and Employment Center, searchable feature. We have a Student Awards Office, searchable feature, and one for student unions and also on-campus disabled students groups. So like at Carleton, where Kim is going to school, there's the Carleton Disability Awareness Center that's supported with funding from the student union, and as a service center like the other service centers for women and LGBTQ students and also international students. So those sort of service centers that are student union supported. And then there are the accessibility services offices on campus, which we have contact information for. And, so at Carleton, Kim, has the Paul Minton Center that will support academic accommodations, and then the Attendant Services program is separate but connected also to that, the PMC and it's the services that it provides. So that sort of gets back to what Anne was talking about too. I think Anne, you were talking about when you were in university, at least, and I know you were recently, but even earlier than that, there might not have been an accessibility services office.
I'd hate to cut you off, but the hour's coming up to an end. I just want to do a quick plug and go over our next event. Then we can keep on this conversation going.
Yeah.
It's all great stuff. I feel bad. It's just like, oh, it's like chef's kiss. Love it.
Okay,
so
great.
I'm just going to do a quick plug. So as Frank said, we have our NEADS websites. We have our needs.ca. We have our disability awards. .ca, and we also have our student awards for NEADS. They're open for application. I'm going to put a link in the chat for that. I also have put down the contact information for our speakers today if you have any follow-up questions, and also the NEADS team. And also our next event is on the 20th, same time at 12 with Stats Canada. And I'm going to put and we're going to have speakers who work in the public sector talk about their experience with disability. And if you would like to register, I'm going to put that in the chat. And yeah, that's all for me.
Great. So we'll stop the recording and then just leave time for folks to have questions that perhaps